For Maya and Chloe, the third-floor walk-up on Ashwood Lane was more than an apartment. It was a sanctuary. After a youth spent in the transient, beige-walled limbo of foster homes, the deed with both their names on it felt like a birth certificate for their new life. It was suspiciously cheap, a fact the harried real estate agent had blamed on outdated plumbing. But they saw only character in the creaking floorboards and the way the morning light bled through the leaded glass of the bay window. It was theirs. The first week was a blissful blur of paint samples and unpacked memories. They laughed, their voices echoing in the empty rooms, a sound that felt like healing. But the house had its own sounds, ones that soon began to whisper beneath their joy. It started with the cold. A deep, damp chill would gather in the master bedroom, the one Maya had claimed, no matter how high they cranked the heat. Then, the whispers. Not words, but sibilant echoes that seemed to coil from the heating vents, just as they were drifting to sleep. A sound like dry leaves skittering over stone. Chloe, the pragmatic older sister, blamed the wind, the old pipes, their own overactive imaginations. But Maya, the dreamer, felt it. She was the one who saw the shadows in the periphery of her vision, shadows that did unshift with the light, but held their shape, tall and gaunt. She was the one who first noticed the smell, a faint, sweet odor of decay that would bloom in a room and then vanish, as if a grave had been opened and closed in a single breath. Their sanctuary was becoming a cage. The laughter died, replaced by a tense, listening silence. They stopped eating meals in the dining room, preferring the tangible brightness of the small kitchen. The cheerful yellow paint in the living room seemed to absorb the gloom, turning sallow and sickly. The turning point was the writing. Chloe found it one Tuesday morning, scrawled in a fine layer of dust on the hallway mirror. It wasn't a word in any language they knew, but a single, complex symbol that looked like a knot of thorns. When she wiped it away, her reflection seemed to ripple. And for a terrifying second, a skeletal face stared back from where her own should have been. That night, the house woke up. The doors began to slam, one after another, a percussive symphony of fury. The whispers became a chorus of maddening, overlapping voices speaking a dead tongue. From the walls came a slow, rhythmic scraping, the sound of something heavy being dragged over and over through the hollow spaces within the plaster. Terrified, the sisters huddled together on the living room sofa, clutching each other as the temperature plummeted. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on them. Then he appeared. He was not a translucent phantom, but a solid, terrifying reality. A figure clad in the tattered funerary robes of another age. His flesh was pulled taut over a prominent skull. His eyes, nothing but pools of absolute blackness. He smelled of turned earth and old blood. This was no ghost. This was a relic, an ancient thing that had been bound to the land long before the city grew around it. And the apartment had been built directly atop his tomb. He glided towards them, his presence a physical weight of hatred and cold. Chloe, driven by a primal need to protect, shoved Maya behind her. "Leave us alone," she screamed, her voice cracking with a terror so pure it was a taste in the air. The thing's head tilted. A long, bony finger, more like a talon, pointed not at Chloe, but at Maya, cowering behind her. Maya's breath hitched. "No," she whimpered. In a movement faster than thought, the entity was upon them. It ignored Chloe's flailing fists, its focus entirely on Maya. A clawed hand shot out and closed around Maya's wrist. The touch was not cold. It was null, a perfect absence of warmth, of life. Maya's skin where he touched turned a necrotic gray, the flesh withering instantly. She screamed, a sound of such utter agony that it shattered the last of Chloe's courage. The entity leaned over Maya, its form seeming to drink the light from the room. It didn't stab or slash, it simply pressed its other hand against her chest. There was no visible wound, but Maya's scream was cut off as her eyes, wide with terror, rolled back into her head. A fine black mist streamed from her parted lips, flowing into the open maw of the creature. It was feeding, drinking her life, her light, her very essence. Chloe could only watch, paralyzed, as her sister's body convulsed and then went still, collapsing to the floor like a discarded doll. The vibrant, hopeful young woman was gone, her face frozen in a silent scream, her eyes hollow and empty. As the last of Maya's energy was consumed, the entity turned its gaze to Chloe, but it did not attack. It seemed sated. Its form flickered, becoming less substantial. It had taken its tribute, it had been fed, then it was gone. The oppressive weight lifted, the house fell silent. The only sound, the ragged, broken sobs tearing from Chloe's throat. She crawled to her sister's body, clutching the cold, stiffening form to her chest. Her tears fell on Maya's face, but they could not wash away the horror. Their dream home, their hard-won sanctuary, was a charnel house. The police, of course, found nothing. No forced entry, no cause of death, just a grieving woman and a tragic, unexplained loss. Chloe never moved out. She couldn't. The apartment was all she had left of Maya and of their dream. She lives there still, a ghost in her own home. She spends her days in the silent, cold rooms, sometimes tracing the dust on the hallway mirror, waiting. Because once a month, when the moon is right, the smell of decay returns, and the whispering begins again. The ancient thing is sleeping, digesting. But Chloe knows, with a certainty that chills her more than the cold, that it will eventually wake up hungry, and she is the only meal left.